Hi, I'm Kedar Ahmed. The Regent Park Neighborhood Association represents residents of Regent Park and provides a broad range of advocacy, services, and events for the residents of Regent Park. RPNA's vision is to foster an inclusive, diverse, and healthy neighborhood in which all residents can feel at home. On April 24, 2023, RPNA held a community meeting to hear residents' perspectives on the rezoning application by the Toronto Community Housing and Tridel. Let's go to the meeting to hear the residents' perspectives.
So I'm just gonna quickly give folks context to the meetings that we've had in the past. We actually had a meeting back in November of 2022 with regards to the rezoning application that Tridel and TCH put in April of 2022. Okay. So give me 1 second here. So welcome to our meeting today. So the first thing we're going to do is just a quick reminder. This meeting has been hosted by the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, which is an organization that represents Regent Park residents, both Market and TCH. And there's a couple of accomplishments listed on the slide. But one of the biggest accomplishments was advocating for community benefits related to phases 4 and 5, which we're going to talk more about in the next slide. Okay, next slide. So we actually started our meeting. So you're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat, get a beverage, get some pen and paper, and center yourself. We're going to be talking about a lot of very important things. So if there's something you don't understand, an acronym, or a phrase, please put it in the chat. Please ask your questions, because the goal of this meeting is to make sure that you are as informed as possible before the citywide consultation meeting that's happening tomorrow on Tuesday, April 25th. So welcome to our meeting again. Our agenda is as follows. We're just going to do a quick land acknowledgement and a Zoom overview. We're going to talk about meeting objectives. I'm going to quickly go through the community agreement, and then we're going to have a discussion on the rezoning application, so presentation and discussion, and then we're going to take questions. Okay. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to our meeting today. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Our MCs for today is Marlene and myself. Marlene, I'm going to need your help, my friend. Sorry for putting you on the spotlight, but I knew you'll be at this meeting, so it'd be great to have your support. Okay, just a quick photo. This is a photo of actually one of the biggest, recent accomplishments of RPNA, which is to work with residents to secure a community benefits framework. And you see that lovely photo of what is possible when residents are united. We can do so much collectively. So that's just a quick photo. This is also a quick photo of the Community Benefits Oversight Working Group that is responsible to help the community figure out how to spend $26.8 million in community benefits when Tridel was chosen as the developer partner for phases 4 and 5. We're hoping to have another photo at the CBA launch this coming Wednesday. So this is a quick reminder and plug. Please join us at Daniel Spectrum on Wednesday, April 26th for the Community Benefits Agreement launch as well. So just some context, Regent Park has a culture of activism. It's an active and engaged community of residents with a long, successful history of community organizing and advocacy. We can talk about access to recreation, legacy fund, Regent Park utilization, but also the social development plan, which is funded by the City of Toronto for about 5 years, $500,000 every year, to a maximum of $2.5 million. So we've made the case that we need to invest in people, not just physical infrastructure. Marlene, do you want to go through the next slide?
Sure. The strength of our community is reflected and nurtured by an active network of resident-led groups. We've got the RPNA, the Community Benefits Coalition, our STP, and the 4 working groups within it. We have Mothers of Peace, Healing as One, Friends of Regent Park, TCHC Tenant Council, Youth Gravity, Neighbourhood Pods, TO, Somali Downtown Union, and the Regent Park Islamic Resource Center, and the Regent Park Tenants Association.
Next
The
one.
Regent Park Neighborhood Association was formed in 2015 to create a unified voice for our community and represents the interests of all residents. We are made up of 50-50 within our own group, 50-50 TCH people and market housing people. We're led by a small elected group of committed and connected volunteers. Our mandate is focused on advocacy, meaningful community engagement, and community building. You want to carry on with this one?
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, you're asking me to. Community Benefits Coalition was formed by the RPNA with support from the local community organizations and the Toronto Community Benefits Network. It is a broad and inclusive coalition of residents, grassroots groups, and local service organizations, ensuring that equitable community benefits, including economic development opportunities for residents, are not only guaranteed, but directed by the community as part of phases 4 and 5 development plan. But the RPNA has already accomplished a great deal over the past 6 years. The internal structure and organization, volunteer recruitment, election, leadership team, committees, working groups, staff, funding, and we're now incorporated. Outreach and engagement, we have had town halls, community meetings, social media, expanding the database and reach, partnerships and coalitions, community leadership, organizing and mobilizing on key issues. Our social development plan, 2.5 million over 5 years. And in phases 4 and 5, we've had the RFP development, developer selection, community benefits framework, and community priorities report. Our community expectations, we want to work with TCHC and Tridel to establish better processes and outcomes for phase 4 and 5. We need a meaningful partnership and collaboration, community decision-making, early consultation and information sharing, transparency and reporting are essential, with also follow-through and accountability, a commitment to the 12 principles of revitalization, clear structures and mechanisms for achieving all of the above. The challenges for redevelopment in the past 15 years of revitalization have delivered many benefits, but also many challenges and disappointments. There have been construction quality issues, timeline and budget problems, behind the scenes decision makings, increased density, reduced proportion of TCHC housing, and re-tendering for phases 4 and 5. There has been a lack of transparency, a lack of reporting, and a lack of accountability. Within the rezoning process, this is a crucial step that will determine the character and the future of our community. Our timelines now with the City of Toronto consultation will be in the winter of 2023. One directional input from residents in the absence of any information from the developer is not a meaningful input or engagement. We want to review, discuss, and have input into concrete plans before they're submitted to the city. Rezoning has implications for our community benefits.
So just a quick summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a quick summary of the pros and cons because we're going to be talking about this later. But we want to make sure that the pros are there's a different vision for phases 4 and 5. We're exploring more community benefits, and you're going to hear from Catherine later on what that's going to look like related to rezoning. We're going to talk about community space. We're going to talk about affordable rental housing. We're also going to talk about potential additional RGI units. So there's a commitment from TCH and Tridel that the units that are meant to be replaced will be replaced, but we haven't secured funding for additional RGI units, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about making sure that residents are hired in the engagement process. The cons are there's a delay to the construction start. So many residents have approached me and said, Walied, I've been waiting for such a long time to move back to Regent Park. Why aren't there any penalties for the delay? And that's something that I hope members of our community are going to raise at tomorrow's consultation meeting, because we need to make sure that there are no further delays. It's splitting up many folks from that community. Families are remaining in the old housing. There's delays to return. There's greater demand in community services. With the proposed density, we want to make sure that there are social services, schools, and the necessary neighborhood infrastructure to support the density that's been proposed. And then also longer construction period. We also talked about increased security concerns for tenants in old buildings and where they'll be moved, and also taller towers push towards Oak as opposed to Cabbage Town, which was also raised. So we're going to now quickly talk about the update from the meeting with the City of Toronto. And what I want to do is I want to provide folks context, the questions first, and then we're going to hear from Catherine. Okay. So these are the questions that we raised to Catherine, who is a city planner. As you can see, we started off asking Catherine Bailey process-related questions. So what is the decision-making process for the rezoning application process for Regent Park phases 4 and 5? What are the decision makers? What role does city planning staff have in reviewing and making recommendations on Regent Park phases 4 and 5? What are the considerations that city planning staff take when evaluating and deciding on rezoning application? Previously committed, will the City of Toronto be hosting another community consultation now, which we know is tomorrow online, that the new city councillor has been elected, which is now Councillor Chris Moyes. As requested by many Regent Park residents at the last consultation, are you committed to having both community consultation meetings before the rezoning application is considered by City Council? As previously committed, will the City of Toronto be hosting another community consultation that is in person? So we also pose that question. And what happens if the city does not approve the rezoning application for phases 4 and 5? So that's a process-related question. We raised a question related to Section 37. So what is the decision-making process as it relates to Section 37? What are the roles of the community, city councillor, city council, city staff, TCHC, and developers in decision-making process? What community benefits does Section 37 cover? We heard a lot about this new regime called community benefit charges. So we wanted clarity on whether it be Section 37 or community benefit charges. So you're going to hear from Catherine about that response. What were the commitments in the initial Section 37 agreement for Regent Park? Will there be a new section agreement for phases 4 and 5 if approved? Housing. We asked, this is a lot of questions related to housing, especially about rent to own, affordable rental options. And so what we asked is, what are the commitments for additional RGI if rezoning were to be approved by the city? Has a rezoning application considered rent to own programs for local Regent Park residents, similar to the programs that were in place for phases 1 to 3? As you're aware, there are 17 TCHC residents that were able to take advantage of these programs and have, basically become homeowners in our community. What tenure and requirements related to affordable housing are included in the secondary plan, which was approved? We also asked about relevant studies, reports, and strategies. So thanks to all of you who informed the space needs report for both indoor and outdoor spaces in Regent Park. The findings of that report was passed on to Tridel and TCHC to include in the community facilities and services report, which was part of the rezoning application. But what we want to know is, will there be a community facilities and services strategy to ensure that the findings of the report are implemented? So coming out from the study that was just completed. We asked that question. We asked, will there be an updated transportation infrastructure report that responds to community concerns related to neighborhood density and local traffic? We heard from many residents, there's not enough parking spots in our community. So we wanted to make sure that folks have that information as well. And how will the community be involved in this plan? We also talked about the importance of community governed spaces. So what are the opportunities for community governed spaces similar to the AOCC, which is a way by which the city of Toronto subsidizes and helps certain community spaces exist. The one that comes to mind is the 519, the 519, which is a great community space. So we wanted a similar model for Regent Park, where the community was part of the governance of our spaces, so that programs are tailored to our needs. So we wanted more information related to that in phases 4 and 5. And what is the process for securing an AOCC model? So we asked that question. So before I get to the answers, and I'm going to need your help because I'm going to be documenting all these answers, I'm going to share on the screen the responses from Catherine, and then we will move on to the next slide. So give me 1 second here. And please do let me know if you can't hear. I just want to make sure that everyone is able to hear it as well. So just let me know. Okay. Okay, my friends, let me know if you can hear it. And 3, it's loading right now. So Michael?
Hello?
Yep. Welcome. I'm just playing. I just want you to make sure you can hear.
Sorry about that. I should.
Okay.
Can you hear it, Michael?
You're running the recording?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can everyone
So
hear this?
again, thank
Can
you
you hear
everyone.
it? Can folks hear it? Just give me a heads up if you can.
Yes, fine. Good.
Yeah, perfect.
For having me today.
Hi.
I am happy to sort of have a conversation about whatever it is that you're interested in talking about. I thank you very much for sending me some of the questions in advance. It's really helpful for me to just make sure that I'm ready to speak about the things that you're interested in particular, because there are just obviously so many different facets to at least even what I'm doing with the rezoning, and then so many other things going on in Regent Park. And I guess first and foremost, just amazing the work that you guys are doing and all of your partner organizations for the community. It's been sort of an education experience for me, sort of coming in from the outside to see just how much history and how much work you guys have already put into your community and the networks and relationships that you've built. And I've really never seen anything like it, and I think it's really incredible. So just to preface with all of that, I noticed that, so the questions that I received sort of related to a few different subcategories. There were questions that relate to sort of the planning application process, about Section 37 as sort of a subset of that, housing, community spaces and facilities. So maybe I'll just go through under the main categories, and we can either have discussion after each one, probably a discussion after each one. Otherwise, you're going to be listening to me talk for far too long. So I don't think that would be desirable necessarily. But the first sort of batch of questions is about process, and maybe I'll take a step back and apologize for those who are already very familiar with the process of planning applications and sort of the land use system in Toronto, but just to make sure that everybody's sort of on the same page. The planning application that I'm reviewing right now, that's been submitted to the city by TCHC and their development partner Tridel, is to amend the zoning, so the permissions for things like height and density, for building setbacks, parking requirements, things like that, for phases 4 and 5 of the Regent Park revitalization project. And the rezoning sort of contemplates a few changes to the previous approval, the approved framework that the revitalization has been working with over the last many years, as you've experienced in your community. And so some of the main objectives that were sort of behind the request by TCHC and Tridel to change the zoning permissions were related to changing or allowing for greater building heights to allow for more residential units, both market units and affordable units that would be social housing, either run by TCHC or another partner, still to be determined in the future, but would allow them the opportunity to do that. To change some of the land use permissions around uses to allow for other types of non-residential uses in that area, to change things like the parking requirements and the bicycle parking requirements and some of those other standards that get set out in the zoning bylaw, to allow for the relocation of the Parliament Street branch of the Toronto Public Library into this area, and basically just to reflect sort of a revised vision that they have for these final phases in terms of what they would look like and the building forms that they're contemplating and things like that. So while TCHC is part of the city in a sense, as just organizationally, the application was submitted in the same way that sort of a private application would be submitted. A request was sort of initiated for city planning to review the application, and it was submitted alongside a number of plans and studies related to just the various impacts of the proposal on things like servicing, pipes, sewage, garbage, road network, things like that, soft community facilities, trees, parks, all of those different things. And those that was submitted about a year ago and has been under review. There was a community consultation meeting that was held online last year. And we've been sort of going through an iterative process of changes to that proposal. We will be in a couple of weeks having another community consultation meeting online with the community to sort of provide an update on where that's at. And ultimately, we being community planning, city planning, will be preparing a final report, a recommendation report to Toronto and East York Community Council that basically includes our recommendations on the application and a copy of the amendment to the zoning bylaw that we're recommending approval of. So City Council, first through Community Council and then ultimately City Council is the one that makes the decision on the amendment at the end of the day. And in this case, and as is with many cases, there's been a lot of dialogue with the councillor since the election. So there's no sort of like intention to come with a surprise recommendation. So we're trying to be very collaborative with TCC and the councillor and those involved. So that's sort of broad strokes what the process is for a planning application. There was a question is what happens if the city doesn't approve the zoning application? So if it's not approved by council, as with any application, the applicant has the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a decision if council decides not to. Frankly, I think that would be a very unlikely in this case, simply because the city is sort of involved as a proponent too. So working towards an agreeable solution is a far more likely outcome than a refusal and an appeal. But that would be the process that would be available. So hopefully that sort of covers off many of the main questions. If there are any further clarifying questions on that category, I'd be happy to answer them.
Waleed has his hand up. Yep, Waleed, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for that very extensive context to the rezoning application. I really appreciate the transparency and pointing to the Ontario Land Tribunal as another body that could approve the rezoning application if City Council doesn't. I am familiar with the OLT. It's an interesting body, especially when it came to the appeal of OPA 558, which we were successful collectively as community and the City of Toronto in maintaining the bylaw. So now it's in full effect. So kudos to everyone who was part of that process, the Regent Park Neighbourhood Association, as well as other partners. My question is with regards to the intense work that has been done by the community in informing the community services and facilities report. I know the community building working group of the social development plan submitted a report directly to the city, and its findings were also incorporated in the application that was put forward by Tridel and TCH. And I'm wondering if you've heard from Tridel or TCHC on a strategy to implement the report's sort of recommendation of outdoor and indoor space, right? So I'm very interested in getting feedback from you with regards to that critical piece, because we don't want to, approve a rezoning application that doesn't also have a strategy to implement the need for space. So love to hear from friends at the city on how that's going to be possible. So why don't we go with that question first, and then I have some other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as part of the planning framework for Regent Park, as many of you know, there's a secondary plan, which is sort of a detailed subset plan in the official plan. And one of the things, and it was created in 2005, sort of when the revitalization began. And one of the things that's required in that is with each of the phases, an update to the community services and facilities strategy. So it's absolutely part of what we're looking at right now. This is going to be challenging because I can't give you firm answers, Waleed and the rest of the group right now, because we are literally having these conversations right now with DCHC and Tridel. And so I don't know exactly where things are going to 100% land. What we do have as part of the application is proposal for areas, amounts of space, square footage. I think it's around 40,000 square feet that came in the latest resubmission of space that's identified as community space in the proposal. So that's sort of what we're looking at in terms of the box, I guess, of indoor space. That would be just the indoor. And then, of course, outdoor space surrounding each of the buildings. There's a central plaza space that's been proposed all throughout the application, and other outdoor spaces. Because the zoning itself, the approach that's being taken with this application is quite sort of stepwise and incremental. So TCHC and Tridel are very much looking at their zoning right now, and then we'll later be submitting detailed site plan applications for each of the buildings. And at that point, we'll also be looking at the design, more detailed design of the space between the buildings. So there's a challenge at this point that we don't know yet all of the specific details of what goes inside the boxes. Mm-hmm. We're laying out the boxes right now.
Is 40,000 in addition to the library?
Let me just confirm the number for you, and I will confirm that in our call here, okay?
Catherine, just maybe as a quick reminder to everyone, the secondary plan approved how much community indoor space? Was it 10,000 square foot? Was it more than that?
So the
Let me check my
secondary
notes.
plan, the secondary plan doesn't have a number for
Okay.
the amount of space. Yeah, and actually, in fact, the enforce an existing planning framework for phases 4 and 5
Mhm.
doesn't have any public facility, like no rec facilities, no parks, no other community facility, like no other requirements really at this point. Like everything that's proposed right now is sort of improvement on the status quo, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so we're not working from sort of enforcing a minimum at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good. And the other question I have when it comes to space in general, like I know we identified indoor and outdoor space in the report. So I'm wondering if there will be feedback on outdoor space. I know there's been a desperate need for green spaces or outdoor spaces for recreational activity. So I just want to make sure that that's been taken into consideration. So the other piece when it comes to like the strategy, right? So how to implement it. I know that you folks are having this conversation. I recall in the presentations that were made by TCH and Tridel in the first community consultation meeting that you were at, they did talk about spaces for community in the library. And I think Michael was kind of pointing to that, but we were hoping to have a central space, right? Like, I think the vision of the community and their vision may be a bit different. Packing certain community space in the library that is inaccessible to the community because the library closes at a certain time is not solving the problem, right? So I think I want to be very clear on that, right? Like I think what the community ask was to try to centralize that space so it's managed under an AOCC. I recall we exchanged emails with regards to the acronym, but we want city support to ensure that the community is a part of the governance model when it comes to how community spaces are accessed, right? Which has been a big gap that was identified in phases 1 to 3. So I was wondering if there's any way that the proposal could be amended to that effect. And I know there's a bunch of questions that we sent out in advance of this meeting, and I'm hoping we could spend the rest of the meeting to go through those questions and get responses, because we're hoping to get, have a meeting with the community, have a meeting with the members of RPNA to update them on the rezoning application. And when we want to be very transparent about what we heard from you and the city, so that, residents have an opportunity to reflect on where we're at, so that they could be informed before they provide any input to Cities Council, the Toronto and East Community Council. I'm assuming that's the proper
You can
title.
say community council is a short
Exactly.
form.
Yeah. And I know a bunch of my friends who sit on it, who have now been on council or been elected to council. So they would love to also hear from us as a neighborhood association on what our concerns are, what our questions are before the motion is moved to approve the rezoning application. So just maybe quickly touch upon that, on the designation of community space from different location to a central location. And then maybe we could go through the questions that were put forward as by the group. And the last thing that I was hoping to say was, this is a very critical time for our community, right? Like the decision that's going to be made is going to impact us for decades to come. And we want to make sure that residents of Regent Park have an opportunity to meaningfully participate. I had issues with the computer earlier. Sometimes I might have internet connectivity. Sometimes Rogers does a good job. Sometimes Rogers sucks. So what we're hoping to do is make sure that there's an opportunity for people to also comment or contribute in person. And I know that that request was put out not just through email from myself and others, but it was something that we heard at the last community consultation meeting as well. There was a lot of residents that said, why can't we have an in-person meeting? And I was hoping a compromise would be a hybrid meeting. You know, for folks who want to join online, they can. And for folks who are in person, they can do that. And I'm making the offer that we as a community have that experience of doing hybrid meetings. And we have partners such as Regent Park Focus, who have supported us with the technological assets that are needed to make that happen. So I'd love for you also to touch on that issue.
Jeannie, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, thanks, Walied. I'll try and remember these various points here. So on the, sorry, did you have something or just say unmute?
Oh, no, nothing.
Okay. So on the subject of the community space, so yes, like I said, this is a conversation that's underway right now in terms of who would be the primary owner of the community space, what's the strategy for how it would be allocated, tenanted, built, maintained. There's a lot of questions, right? And so these are a lot of the questions that we are asking of TCHC right now is, you know, what are they even initially proposing that we can comment on it? I would say that we've definitely heard loud and clear about the request from the community for space that the community has, that residents of the community have more direct control and management over. And I think it's going to be part of a larger conversation that just to sort of understand expectations will not, I think, be resolved before the rezoning advances, but we want to make sure that we're setting it up for success to have that conversation and to make sure that it is ready to go by the time the spaces are ready to go. TCHC has shared a bit with us about some of the further engagement that they want to have around decision making around some of these spaces, both the indoor spaces and outdoor spaces, and also the spaces that are currently designated as like commercial or retail, which would be located in their future buildings. One thing I've asked of them is that I want them at this community consultation meeting coming up in a few weeks to be quite clear about what that strategy is going forward and what are the opportunities for folks to be involved in that conversation. I may be speaking a little out of turn for Sherwin here, but I know that the councillor is quite interested in this as well. We've had a few preliminary conversations about what are some ways that this can be achieved, and it's something that they bring up in all of our meetings as well. So that message has definitely been conveyed on the community space piece. Dini, did you want to chime in on this part here?
Yes and no, not really this particular, the issue around space.
Okay.
More around the issue around the consultation.
Okay.
The community consultation. We have received the notification that an upcoming consultation is happening. One of the requests that was brought forward at the last consultation and has been made many times since then in different forums is a request for there to be a Regent Park exclusive forum.
Thank you, Dini. I forgot about that.
Park, yeah, where Regent Park residents don't have to compete with people from all across the city in different neighborhoods to try and have some conversation around this rezoning. They feel that they will be more directly impacted, which is very true. We're already experiencing pressure when it comes to the fact that a lot of residents are having trouble getting spaces in the aquatic center, on the athletic fields, in the community center, you know, and they're concerned about the density and what will that mean for this community in regards to programs, services, and access. So they would really like to have a conversation with Regent Park about Regent Park. And we were wondering if that is a possibility.
Okay, and sorry, just to clarify, Dini, just so that I make sure I understand what you're suggesting, this would, in terms of like who would be you would want to be explicitly included in this conversation? This would be only people who live within the boundaries of Regent Park, or maybe you can clarify that further.
Yes, yeah, it's Regent Park residents, yes.
So
Community
and not
members
like
and-
TCHC residents per se.
And market.
Yeah, so TCC market, the way we're operating right now when it comes to, for example, the community benefit regime that is rolled out to the $26.8 million that was committed for Tridel to be the new developer partner, is the footprint as identified in the social development plan, right? So what we're hoping is to make sure that residents, market and TCC residents, who are part of even that process of trying to decide who the new developer partner is, which is now Tridel, at least weigh in on the rezoning application, because it's going to impact Regent Park residents.
Yeah, and I had said community members because there's a number too of organizations in the community that serve the residents that are also going to be impacted. So it's, what we would like is to not have to compete with people from other neighborhoods and across the city of Toronto and other special interest groups and have some conversation about this rezoning.
Are you thinking that, like, at the general CCM, do you feel that residents and folks from the community were somewhat outnumbered by perhaps Cabbagetown or other people who were like, interest groups? Is that the concern?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can't tell because they're webinars. You can't even tell who it is that's speaking, where they come, or are they?
But as soon as they open your mouth, you can.
Catherine,
We don't know how many people are there. We don't know how. On this side of the webinar, you don't know all of that.
Yeah.
No. And their interests are not the same as ours.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all the same as ours. They don't have the 38-story buildings we do. They don't have the density we do, as is typical.
Yeah. I think Kumsa has a very important point to raise. Kumsa, you want to go next?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because I remember I've been to a lot of city consultations, and I remember the days where I'd be able to go in person. You'd be able to meet neighbors. A lot of people from the community can find it as an accessible space to talk about a development project, to meet the developers, meet the city planners, right? And so it's also an opportunity to learn about the community. I did see, I think it's on Jarvis, I think 295 Jarvis, but I think the city is holding a community consultation for that development on Jarvis in the same ward. And so it does seem like the city is doing in-person consultation. So I wonder if that could be something that could be explored for Regent Park as a way to make sure that it's accessible, but also open, and you're most likely going to draw more local residents to that type of space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to take this back. I've had conversations with TCHC and their engagement team about, other engagement that they've been contemplating around the applications and the development. So I can't commit at this point to the city leading anything like that. I mean, the date we have booked is only a couple of weeks away, so we would not be able to organize something in person and provide adequate notice at this point. We are also under a lot of pressure to sort of to keep this moving as well. But
well, I think that's a concern, right? I think what I'm hearing from your responses today is that there's still a lot of unclarity, and it seems like things are moving forward without the community, right? And I think that's really important that as part of this engagement phase, that as much information, as much transparency is provided to the community in terms of these details, because I think there's a lot of interest for the community to inform that, right? In terms of what are the spaces going to look like? What is the design of the spaces going to look like? What is the model, right? And so I think all these questions that you're taking back, to your teams and discussing internally, I think at some point that needs to come back to the community. So there could be a very clear expectation of this is what's committed as part of the development, but this is also how we're going to secure it as a city, right? You mentioned the box, right? So is it an agreement the city is signing for that space? Where does that commitment lie? Is it in a document? Right. So I think there still needs to be a lot more clarity that's shared to the community. Right. And And so I'm a little disappointed to hear that, you know, this always happens where it's like, you know, there's a rush for time or there's a certain deadline that you have to meet, and because of that, the community's not involved, right? Or you have to skip through certain steps, right? And I think what we heard at the last consultation, I was there, you know, many people did not feel it was accessible being at that online consultation. And I was really hoping the city would be able to take that back and to be able to come back with some more inclusive ways of people being able to participate in the consultation, right? I mentioned that, you know, in the same ward, right, at 295 Jarvis this week, there is an in-person consultation meeting happening, right, at Toronto Metropolitan University, right? So I wonder even if Sherwin, you can maybe speak about this to the city councilor's office, because I know, like, you know, how did that come about? Is that possible that could be brought to Regent Park if there are in-person consultations happening? I wonder if that's something that the city councilor's office also has some involvement in.
Yeah, actually, I was at that one, so I can speak to that one.
Okay.
It was specific because it related to a rooming house that was being demolished, and the residents of the rooming house don't have, really don't have access to the technology, and their homes are about to be demolished. It's not GCHC; they don't have those lines of communication. So that was a pretty specific one-off. But I certainly am hearing what you're saying, and I think it's something we can take back.
And Catherine, I just want you to know that I've done a lot of work in my community supporting vaccination efforts. And to be honest, I was shocked about how many residents didn't have access to the internet.
You can't afford.
Like, my phone number was ringing. I helped register with 2,000 residents in our community to access vaccines. So there is a gap. You might not see it, right? But there are residents in our community that don't have access, right? So just like the rooming house issue, we have the same issue here. And the community members have like paid the price. You know, this development has been delayed, and it's had an impact, right? You know, there was a lot of folks who thought phases 4 and 5 would be done by now. But, you know, their families have grown. There's no question whether they're going to come back and when they're going to come back. So if we're going to do this, let's do this right? Like, we can't just rush it and not do it properly and then have complaints afterwards, right? So I'll recommend that we be cautious and not run on the developer partner's timetable, but our own timetable as folks who are going to be the beneficiary of whatever development is going to happen in phases 4 and 5, the residents of Regent Park specifically.
Yeah, we did a youth needs assessment, and we found out the same thing. Problems that kids brought forward was that their parents can't afford internet and they do not have access. That's one of the reasons why they're very, hopeful that there'll be a good computer lab in the new library, because they don't have access.
The people who seem to get all the city's time are the people who are making the money. And the people who get kicked out of the process are the people who will have to live with whatever they do to us. People should be listening. I'm talking, Michael, please. The people who are...
Well, at least you recognize me. Nobody else does.
Listen to the most are the people.
Mm-hmm.
We're the people you need to listen to the most, because we're going to sit with the mistakes that they made. Are you talking, Michael?
We'll have Michael go next, Marlene. Just finish up your point. Yeah.
We sit with all the mistakes they made in 1, 2, and 3. And if you don't listen to us now before you make your decisions, we will sit and live with the mistakes they make in 3 and 4. I will talk to you about something about the library. They are giving people the idea that, well, if you don't do this for us, you're not going to get your library. And we know that the city has already given money for that library, but that's not what they tell the residents. You'll get your library if you give us this. If you vote for everything we want in this the refiguration that we want to have, you'll get your library. But if not, you may not get it. Well, I'm sorry, but I spoke to the chief librarian years ago, and she's thrilled to come here, and she already has the money to build. They're not telling the truth. You need to listen to us.
Thank you, Marlene. Michael, you want to go next? Michael, go ahead.
So at one point, they said that the zoning can state that a certain amount of community space may be built. In other words, they can zone for space to be community space or residential, and they don't have to decide the exact amount. So they could, in other words, zone for more than they think they're actually going to build and let that decision still to be made. At one point, they said that they were going to include all the second floor space in that category, a space that may be able to be used, that would be zoned, so it could become community space. But now the numbers are not completely clear to me. They then later sort of retracted that and said it wasn't going to be all of the second floor space. So I don't know what's going on. My estimate would be that if they had included all the second floor space, it would be about 55,000 plus the library, because it was originally going to be 55,000 including the library. Now you're saying 40,000, which even if it's plus the library is still less than 55,000 plus the library. So you seem to be playing a recording of something I said at a previous meeting, sort of. I'm not sure what's going on right now. People to stop complaining and then not actually do it. So I hope that we're getting closer to 50,000 square feet plus the library that can be zoned so that it could become community space if the funding were available, even though they may not be able to be certain at this time that they will be able to provide that much. It should be zoned that way. The other things I wanted to say, I mean, as far as community meetings are concerned, it's just sort of about time that the planning department went back to in-person meetings. Almost everybody else has. And lastly, I didn't realize the planning department was so involved in the discussions over the ownership. I was previously told that the planning department would sort of not be involved in that, just the amount. The ownership would be discussed by other people. But if the planning department is involved in those discussions, then the minute details matter, and an AOCC is very different than other types of NGO-owned space. So I think it makes a lot of difference that it is an AOCC, which would be managed by a board that is appointed by city council after a community meeting, and that presumably the city would be the legal, at least the legal employer, if not the legal owner of the physical space. So this is a much more closely tied to the city structure of ownership and operation, and that but it's still distinct. It's not like there's a great distinction between an AOCC and other types of city structures. So it's a very specific thing. If it's not an AOCC, then it's almost not even close to an AOCC. There's nothing else like an AOCC. So it's basically either is an AOCC or it isn't. So, and I'm saying it should be. My last point is there seems to be a trend as the phases proceeded, which even started before this. I think it's pretty evident in phase 3 that the buildings are closer to the street, that they're taller at the front rather than having the taller parts sort of behind. In other words, they're back to the normal pattern in the city where they try to use every available space with hardly any space between the buildings and not much space in front of the buildings. I'm particularly concerned about Gerrard Street. I don't like the idea of mid-rise buildings on the main streets. So I think that if you're going to have the taller buildings, which is fine, they should be at least 50 meters back from Gerrard Street. so that basically the main streets do not change in character. And in the phases 1 and 2, that would have been possible because of the densities were such that you could make those choices. But if you push the densities so high, then you can no longer make good building massing choices. So I hope that basically the building massing choices take priority and the density just goes as far as can be under good building massing, not make the density what you want and then settle for second best building massing. That seems to be recording of what I said last time. I did have 1 or 2 additional questions I wanted to.
Michael, we'll take questions in the end. Please wait.
After some of the questions have been answered, can we get into the Section 37 pieces and the community benefits that could come up under there and how they are decided and negotiated and what some thoughts have been brought from the developer and TCH around that?
Thank you for that important reminder, Ishmael. Catherine, do you want to comment first about what was said? And then I'm going to share on the screen the questions that we...
Do you know what happened there? Because that was a recording.
There's some very critical pieces that we wanted to make sure are covered. So comment if you'd like, and I'll share the next piece.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing the key concerns that you've had.
Michael, I'm not ignoring you. I said that wait until we're done with the responses from the city, and then we'll take questions. Do you get that?
Explain to Michael what is going on.
Michael, we're showing the video of the discussions we had with Catherine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, because I heard everything I said last time.
I understand you did. Yes. Okay, so let's proceed and then we'll take questions. And I have Ines and Miguel first. Okay. Okay.
I think so many of these I'm recognizing from other conversations, and I do appreciate that. And I imagine you've had many of these conversations amongst yourselves and perhaps with others as well, with the social development plan groups or TCHC. I guess we touched on quite a number of different things there. I think basically, as a planner, we're trying to balance a lot of different things. We're trying to balance a lot of different inputs from different individuals who have different opinions about how things should be or what they would like to see. We are balancing against larger political pressures, even provincially, right? The big push for intensification for housing. It's the only thing anyone's talking about right now, is the need for new housing. And it's a very loud voice in the room, I have to say. There's, obviously needs for making sure that hard and soft services keep up with the pace of growth, making sure that where there are changes to things like built planning approvals for different areas, that they are sensitive to the context while also trying to achieve some of the other growth goals. So, I mean, many of the things you've touched upon are absolutely they're there in the conversation, and I do appreciate you bringing them. If you'd like, maybe did you want to go on to the Section 37 contribution conversation now?
Yeah, just before we do that, just want to make sure that we covered all the process questions that we had.
Okay. Yep.
So I think we've answered the first one. Community council. What role does city planning staff have in reviewing and making recommendations on Regent Park phases 4? I think we kind of covered that, Catherine, but correct me if I'm wrong. Right? It's going to be a recommendation, right? Through a staff report, right?
Yeah.
What are the considerations that city planning staff take when evaluating and deciding on a rezoning application? Was that covered?
I think, well, you can let me know if you think it was covered, but I mean, I listed a few things there. I mean, in my little notes preparing for this, I had things like, the policy framework, the OP framework is considered, the context, the impacts of changes to the built form, where there are opportunities for intensification, feasibility for the applicant, feasibility for TCHC is a consideration. input we receive from the councillor, from members of the public, as well as technical considerations. Sometimes there's actually just a technical reason for why something sort of falls the way it does, in terms of maybe how wide you need a road so that a garbage truck can turn, or how wide a building needs to be so that you can actually have a unit that's a size that makes sense, and a hallway and things like that. So sometimes there's actually just technical reasons.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was hoping you could comment on is, when we chose the new developer partner and secured the 26.8 million, it was related to community benefits, related to selecting the new developer partner, but we have not talked about any community benefit dollar contributions. And I think we're going to talk about that in section 37. So that's going to be very vital that we cover today, because the social development plan actually struck a working group to address the impact, sort of the social costs that will come with the approval of the rezoning application and the increased density. So we need to make sure that we've had a robust conversation to address that, because 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, residents will be, asking those very critical questions like, why haven't you planned and resourced that piece? Mm-hmm. The other thing was, previously committed with the City of Toronto be hosting another community. We talked about that. I think we've made the case that we would like to have an in-person meet option as well for residents for access sake. So we're not gonna repeat that. Will the sort of City of Toronto be hosting another? What happens if the city does not approve the rezoning application? We talked about that, the Ontario Land Tribunal, and now it's Section 37. So Ishmael, if you like, this is the critical piece that you wanted to also get feedback on. So what is the decision-making process as it relates to Section 37? What are the roles of the community, city council, city councilor, city council, city staff, TCC, and the developer in this decision-making process? What community benefits does Section 37 cover? What were the commitments in the initial Section 37 agreement for Regent Park revitalization? And will there be new section agreement for phases 4 and 5 if approved? So why don't we just hit those pieces first?
Sure.
Then we'll go to housing, which is important.
All right, no problem. So Section 37. Section 37, the number itself refers to Section 37 of the Planning Act, the provincial piece of legislation that guides development in Ontario. And so Section 37 of the Planning Act was actually recently changed to implement the new community benefits charge framework. Not going to get into that too much, because actually we're under the old framework here. So Section 37 agreements are used to secure community benefits, and they have to be in the form of capital facilities. So not operating, not program, has to be a capital facility, either the facility itself or cash for the facility. And they are secured, that is secured when the zoning bylaw is changed to permit more height and density than there was permitted before. Section 37 agreements can also be used in other ways. They can be used to conserve heritage or conserve rental housing, or they can also be used to secure the replacement of rental housing. So it can be community benefits or other types of things that need to be secured in the form of an agreement. You can use a Section 37 agreement for that. And the term community benefits is very confusing in Regent Park right now because of the other community benefits contribution from Tridel, which you alluded to. So I guess maybe I'll just preface all of this by saying what I'm talking about has nothing to do with was it 28 million? Walied, is that the
26.8? Yeah.
26 point. Okay, I had some of the numbers right. It has nothing to do with that. That is, as I understand it, something completely different and would be used for things that are not capital facilities necessarily. And there's a whole other process that you're involved with that I'm not involved with to determine where that gets spent. So confusing overlap of terminology, but I just want to make sure we're not talking about that same thing here. So as I mentioned before, Section 37 of Planning Act has been changed. So the city can't enter into any new Section 37 agreements. Mm-hmm. However, where there is an existing Section 37 agreement, it can be amended. So in this case, in Regent Park, there is an existing Section 37 agreement from the 2005 rezoning. And that Section 37 agreement just contains terms related to the demolition and replacement of the social housing that existed before the revitalization and requirements around tenant relocation and assistance. So it doesn't currently contain any sort of requirements around capital facilities, only relates to the rental replacement.
Okay.
Yeah, the units themselves, the RGI supplements, and then tenant assistance. So the intention at this point is to use that existing Section 37 agreement that we can amend to secure some of the in-kind benefits that are part of the proposal. And so the other sort of test that we need to satisfy is that these benefits have to have a reasonable relationship to the increase in height and density, right? Which many of the things like the community facilities do, right? If you're adding residents, you're adding height and density, then you need to add new facilities to support those residents because they wouldn't necessarily be accommodated in the resources that were in the community before this proposal, right? So it just has to sort of make sense in that way. And you also, as planners, when we're making our evaluation or decision, the development itself has to be good planning. It's not just sort of like a goodie to make up for the thing for the proposal being no good. It has to also still be good. And then also we are able to secure. So how there's no like necessarily specific protocol for it, but typically Section 37 is a negotiation that takes place between the applicant and planning staff and the councillor. And then staff as part of the final report, we recommend what the community benefits to be secured in the Section 37 would be.
Okay.
And so they would be selected on the basis of like what's needed in the community. It can depend on the project. What are some of the issues of the area and the nature of the application? And in this case, I mean, there are so many things that are proposed as part of the application that's what we're sort of thinking for the Section 37.
Ishmael has a question. Go ahead, Ishmael.
Go ahead.
Yeah, could you spell out what those are? I know that the existing Section 37, as you've said, only deal with tenant relocations and replacement of units. And right now you've said that it has to relate to community, the addition, like community spaces. Could you say a little bit more what the intended elements are for this Section 37?
Yeah, so again, this is the conversation that we're having right now with TCHC and Tridel around exactly what would be included. But basically, a Section 37 is an instrument. It's an agreement that the city has to ensure that something happens. If it was a private developer, like just a regular condo application or something like that, anything that if they had proposed like some public art or something like that, we would say, okay, it goes in the agreement, and now we have this commitment that you're going to provide it. So what we're looking at right now are just the details of what's the exact details of the commitment.
So you are aware of it, or are unable to share what those are, or because the reason why we are asking this is because one way of thinking about this for us is if we know what the possibilities are in terms of what elements to secure. So, for instance, if it's the community space, if it's a commercial space, it's what they call. Then we can sort of say to both the councillor and to the developer, go for this one as opposed to that one. And if we can find out the sort of amounts, the possible amounts, then we can sort of see what community needs could be met under them. But right now it feels that we're blind to any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to tell you that I'm not intentionally keeping that information from you. It's like literally in process this week. So I don't have that information to share with you. But hopefully it's helpful for you to sort of think of it in terms of capital facilities, right? The community spaces that have been shown as part of the proposal are capital facilities, right? The library might have that's already in the library's budget, so that's probably a little bit different. But basically, just anything that we want to the things that are being touted as benefits of the application and how that's going to be secured.
When would we be able to hear from the city, the councillor, the developer, what is being proposed?
So the proposal itself is public, right? Like what TCHD and Tridel have offered in terms of the 40,000 square feet. Not as it relates to the actual agreement itself, but what the development is, right? And that it consists of this community space, that it consists of the central plaza, that it consists of land for the library to build their building, things like that. You know, those are public, right? And those have been presented by the applicant all throughout. Hopefully that's helpful.
I feel like it's like you're hinting. Those are the Section 37.
That's it.
Or because it feels like is it? It's not explicit. Maybe I'm a bit of a certainty guy. Are those the Section 37 areas?
That's what I'm saying. I can't tell you is because we haven't determined exactly what's going in the Section 37. But those are community benefits, and they're part of the proposal.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Kumsa, Michael, you go next after Kumsa. Kumsa, go ahead first.
Walied, I'm sorry, we've been waiting here for a while.
I think that's where I think a lot of the gap is, and I think which is why the question that came up around the community services and facility strategy is because like there's been a lot of engagement that's happened into the community in terms of like trying to think about what are the important benefits, and also with new density, like what is going to be the impact to community services and facilities in the neighborhood. And just having a report that sits there is not enough, right? You actually have to have a strategy of how you actually implement the report, right? So how are you actually actioning those gaps that have been identified in the community, right? And just even through our engagement, we've heard so many different potential capital investments, right? Whether it's things like, you know, adding a dome to the existing green space, right? Where there's an athletic field, right? Having a dome that could allow for winter activities, right? Things like a skate park for youth, you know, childcare for parents and families, you know, schools, right? We've heard a lot about the challenges with accessing schools, like even residents in Regent Park, like some people living in certain buildings have to go to a further school, right? So I think a lot of these things have been shared and it's been reported, but I think like kind of the gap of how does that actually translate into a strategy that's transparent, that involves the community, I think is the big gap. And so I think getting some more clarity, I think from you and the city in terms of, is the strategy going to be put in place? Is there an opportunity for the community to be involved in helping to inform some of those strategies around, you know, the important community services and facilities that should accompany phases 4 and 5, I think would be really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great point. I'm sort of sitting here laughing because I feel like this is what I've been saying to TCHC too, is they have a lot of ideas. And I'm like, you have got to communicate to people exactly how you're going to do that, and to us and to the councillor, right? So I really wish truly that I had more concrete answers to share with you. I'm not trying to be coy. And I didn't want to wait, you know, too late and, you know, until everything's done to have the conversation with you too. So it's a fine balance, I think.
Yeah, this is very helpful. And you recommend like for residents to even like show up to the consultation and share some of these ideas that they have around capital projects or capital investments? Like, is that an opportunity for the city to be able to capture some of those like important capital investments that residents want to see? Like, could the consultation process capture those pieces?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that, you know, the people who need to hear it will be there, right? The people who need to be reminded that these are the priorities of the community. You know, there's not, as much as like the rezoning is one thing only, it's the people who are involved, especially people from TCHC and Tridel, are going to be, you know, involved in other things as well. So, yeah.
So we have Sherwin and then Michael. Go ahead, Sherwin.
Yeah, hi everyone. I just wanted to quickly say that it's not as formal, the process of consultation, but our ward has a Toronto Centre Projects.ca.
Section 37 agreement were to specify that a certain amount of cash were to be transferred to the city, then the city would be able to buy or build something with that cash, and then the city would be the owner. On the other hand, if the Section 37 agreement says that something will be built, I think that that should also say built and transferred to the city ownership. Because there's a difference between Tridel and TCHC saying they're going to build a certain amount of space, but it's their space and they're going to rent it to whatever NGO can show up with the greatest amount of money, versus saying it's part of the Section 37, so a certain amount of that space, like 10,000 square feet, for example, becomes the property of the city. The city can then turn it into an AOCC without having to charge rent. It then becomes the decision of the board of the AOCC.
That's we can quickly go through that as well. But just before we do that, I just want to make sure that I think we're going to quickly have a discussion before we move into housing, just because it's 7:28. There's only two last parts of this video where this discussion related to housing. So we'll take the first speakers list. Miguel, you want to go first? I had Ines earlier.
Yes, Ines. I think it's Ines before me.
No, Ines is not here, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess the whole conversation about the library, to me particularly, I'm not really concerned about it because, as Marlene stated, it's already under the public library budget. The only concern for me is to have the space for our community, which will help us to move forward as we develop our programs for our community. We want some autonomy. So that's the reason what we want a community center, not run by the city or for other organizations, but made in Regent Park for residents and by residents. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Miguel. Does anyone else have any comments related to what we've heard so far before we go delve into the last two pieces, housing and the relevant studies, reports, and strategies? Anyone else?
Is there anything we have to get ready for tomorrow?
Yeah, registration and comments. So this is going to be the last part of the meeting where Catherine is going to provide advice on what needs to be heard at the consultation meeting tomorrow. Okay, so I'll just go with the recording. Oh, you have a question? Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, do you know what the update has been to the submission and what the changes are in the latest submission?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's on the website, but the changes are, and you're gonna hear actually those comments in the recording, but it's related to there is in the secondary plan, I think, roads that are supposed to be connected. In the application that was put forward, they were not connected. Trying to recall the street name. I don't know if it's Tubman but we'll hear it in the recording. Okay. I don't want to misspeak. That's why I'm showing you folks the recording. Okay.
Did she talk about the number of towers? I don't know.
Yes, she did. She's going to bring it up. This is the last part of the meeting. Yes, Michael?
It seems like they perceive this as like like this has been going on for a year. Why can't we get it done now?
Yeah.
But, I would have expected like 3 or 4 meetings with the community over the course of that year. And then we might feel like, well, we'd been involved. We'd had some chance, and now it's time to get it done. If they're just going to basically have one meeting at the beginning and one meeting at the end, then of course it's going to leave people feeling like the end should be really the beginning because they really haven't done much yet.
But they're doing that by design, right? Like, I mean, even listening to Catherine speaking here, I mean, she's talking about the city as a proponent of this proposal, right? Not as a neutral arbiter of whether or not it makes sense. Certainly not for this community. They're a proponent of it based on city priorities. It has nothing to do with what's good for this community.
That's pretty normal. I mean, even if the city isn't technically the proponent, they still have something that they are trying to get out of it. And it's usually even more density than the developer wants.
They're pushed by the province.
Mm-hmm. There was also
but Regent Park is crazy, right? I mean, what they're proposing will make the final phases of Regent Park the most densely populated couple streets in North America. It'll be more densely populated than St. Jamestown, which currently holds that position. You know, and just to the point around the community meetings, I mean, saying that they don't have time and that there are reasons for other in-person community meetings. There's one coming up in Cabbagetown. It's in person and it's about bike lanes, you know, and they just prioritize those communities. I mean, it's so frustrating to watch this process and see them just bulldoze.
That's, I think, what we have to say.
The whole reason for this was supposed to be COVID. I mean, they can have in-person meetings now. It should just be the norm that they go back to that.
Yeah. Well,
everybody else has.
They're purposely not doing that in Regent Park because they know people will come out and they know there are accessibility issues among people who have strong opinions. Like right now in the old housing, people are being forced out of the community. They're being forced out, no room in the community for them after waiting for 17 years and housing being, you know, managed to demolition. You know, it's just really, it's so shameful.
Mm-hmm. We got Miguel with his hand up, and then I want to go back to the recording so you can hear the rest of this stuff. Miguel, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing. When the people that are being displaced are our sons and daughters, our close relatives to us. Those are the ones who don't have a future in this community, and they should. About anything else, about anyone coming from the outside our borders, our Regent Park perimeter, we should give them priority for housing. Rent to own or home ownership, whatever is available, we must do to retain, to keep our youth living in this community than rather to be replaced and be moved cheap to another location outside of Regent Park. Thanks.
Excellent point, Miguel. And please make sure you raise it at tomorrow's meeting, okay?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so let's go back to the recording. Our friends at the city know that we did come up with the community priorities report. We are very invested in those pieces. For example, the endowment, fund. We want to make sure there's sustainable funding for the community, the long term, right? That was one of the suggestions that was put forward by residents. And we just hope that this process will be more open to the community. My fear is that these negotiations happen behind the scenes and then we're told about the outcome. And I don't think that's the best way to capture the needs of the community. We have gone out of our way to make ourselves available to both Tridel and TCH to engage directly, and it hasn't happened as we hoped. So, we just want to make sure that there's that space to have that really constructive dialogue on what the community wants instead of recommendations coming from folks about what they think Section 37 will be, right? So that's very critical to us. Ishmael, go ahead.
Yeah, so this one is as it relates to some initiatives that are coming from employment and economic development. I think community commercial spaces. So TCHC and the developer, both of them developed proposals, and that was part of the submission. And one of the conversations we're currently having is container markets as opportunities for commercial spacing, affordable commercial spacing. What Turner Community Housing and the developer are thinking is internal commercial as part of the building makeup. But if we were to explore opportunities for container markets, the moments to do that would be now as part of the rezoning, or would it have to be part of further conversations later? But if we're within the timeline, then I just want to have that understanding. Because if you're going to build a community of $1 billion and there's no opportunities for communities to improve commercially, then it becomes really gentrification, right? Yeah. So we need affordable community commercial at all levels.
Well said.
I mean, that's sort of what I was thinking too. And then before you said it, just that there's been talk by TCHC about having affordable retail as part of the retail mix in these phases. And so I I think we all need more information about what that actually looks like, right? Maybe that's the opportunity to work with that. And it's in like a, an indoor retail space. It's a space that has, access to plumbing and washrooms and loading and garbage and stuff like that. It just provides different opportunities. Right?
And lastly, sorry for speaking a lot. Lastly, I think, and this is just making me realize that it always feels like catching up to a bullet train, these processes. And I think even with the councillor representative here and yourself, the last time the 5-0, I think it was called, it's in Spadina, the container markets there, it did require the councillors' efforts to work with city staff in making that happen. So maybe offline after this meeting, maybe when you do take a look at it, figuring out a pathway or possible pathways it could take, right? So at least conversations.
But housing are included in the secondary plan. And then Dini, we'll go to you next.
Sorry, Dini, did you want to actually jump in first, or?
Well, you'll cover it, because one of my questions was TCHC has said that in order to have the additional RGI, which was something that when Kristen was councillor, she advocated for very strongly, that it not just meet the replacement of RGIs, but that we actually increase it. Add additional RGIs. But TCHC tells us that would require subsidies in order to have the additional RGIs. And one of my concerns all along has been, having the will to go after those subsidies. The affordable housing stock is going to bring in some revenue where RGI doesn't. Is there a role that the city actually plays in supporting TCHC to get those subsidies? So that's my...
Okay, yeah. Add that on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So on the housing piece, so the proposal that's been submitted and then the subsequent alterations has included sort of housing in a couple different categories, right? So there's the under TCHC, well, I guess maybe there's the market component. There would be the private component that Tridel would be developing and would be either rental or condo at market prices. There would be under the TCHC column, there would be the completion of their obligation to replace the RGI units that existed before the revitalization started. And then they also have a proposal to add new affordable units, affordable being a broad term that is not necessarily defined in terms of exactly what the subsidy would be or the level of affordability would be. In the latest resubmission that we just received, that new affordable unit count is sitting at about 637 in terms of what they're targeting. So the way that it will work with the rezoning is that the rezoning is, again, like I said, to create the box to build within. It's to give TCHC the space and the permission to build these units. They currently do not have funding for any of the new units. They only are able to do the replacement. And they would not, under the sort of framework for CMHC and other funding programs, they wouldn't be able to even get funding guaranteed until they're closer to being ready to build. It's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. And whether or not these new units, these new affordable units would be RGI or rent to own or another type of affordable housing would depend on the available funding, sort of closer to the time that they're contemplated to be built. So that is not going to be sort of nailed down, like in terms of a rent to own program or something, is not something that can be nailed down at this time, what exactly these affordable units would be. And I guess to answer the third bullet point, the secondary plan doesn't include any requirements related to new affordable housing. It just encourages the development of new affordable housing, which of course is encouraged in the policy and something that everybody would like to see and what TCHC aspirationally wants to do as well, but they're not in a position to, they don't have the funding to build those yet at this time.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Deanie, can you just, without it written down, I'm sorry, it went right out of my head. Your further question.
Yeah, my question is whether or not the city is working with TCH.
Oh, yes. Right. Thank you.
Subsidies. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So that is the role of the Housing Secretariat at the city. So they would work with TCHC to make applications to other levels of government or to add to the city's budget funding for new affordable housing in whatever form that is. So they've certainly been involved in our conversations and are aware of sort of the number of units that we're looking to have and helping us to sort of form the next steps for that. Yeah.
Excellent. We got Kumsa, then Dini, and then Marlene. Go ahead, Kumsa.
My hand's not up.
Yeah, my question is, I guess, just like maybe trying to like understand better like the connection between the housing piece as well as the Section 37. One of the examples that we did take a look at very recently, I think, was the Alexandra Park revitalization, the last phases of Alexandra Park. And what we did notice was that as part of their Section 37 agreement, that there were some commitments through Section 37 to build additional affordable housing as well as affordable home ownership. So I'm wondering if the city is considering leveraging Section 37, right, which could be capital investments towards the building of new affordable housing, similarly to how it's been done on Alexandra Park. And then the other piece is, if there is additional affordable housing being built, would the city require them to be under the OP 558, which is the City of Toronto's affordability definition, or would it be tied to market or any sort of definition that they came up with?
Excellent point.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So yeah, Section 37, again, as part of these conversations, it would certainly be a type of capital facility that could be included in a Section 37 agreement, right? As you noted, it was done in Alex Park and it's done in other places. So that's, I think, from my perspective, absolutely on the table. Affordability definition, which one would apply? That I don't know myself, and I'm not even sure if we would be able to know at this point. Sometimes it's related to the funding that's available. It's also been extremely in flux recently with the city's the change in definition that the city made to what constitutes affordable housing, making it more related to income and means as opposed to the average for the city. There's been new legislation coming down from the province, some of the things around inclusionary zoning that revert back to the old definition of using averages and then a percentage below the average. So it's honestly a complete moving target at this point.
Marlene, you want to go next?
Yeah, I probably completely misunderstood this, but I'll ask the dumb question anyway. Are you saying, like you said, they may not have the funding for the new units, so they could actually be granted the rezoning that they're asking for, build the tall buildings and so on and so forth, not produce the affordable units?
Yeah, so that's, I don't think you didn't misunderstand per se. Yeah, so they are looking for the zoning permission at this point without having the funding. So that was definitely the case.
So we could end up with all those buildings and they don't produce more affordable housing.
I suppose theoretically, that would be a huge bait and switch. And that would not be, what would be included as part of what's recommended for approval. The whole point of the exercise is on the basis of allowing new affordable housing.
It's possible.
I don't think No, I don't think it's possible. Really, no.
See, my challenge there, Marlene, is that they'll get the funding for the affordable rental units, but not for additional RGI.
That's going to be concerning for sure.
And that would be a real concern.
Yeah.
The idea is to get the RGI.
Exactly.
Anything, we want the RGI. So they could actually do, get all of these things that we might not want, and they won't deliver on the RGI. That is very possible, isn't it?
Yeah, which negates why Regent Park exists in the first place.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Negates that. So yeah, I'm hoping we'll push for that to happen. So I think there's
to start preventing that. How can you stop them from doing that? Can that not be part of the package? Yes, you can have what you want, but you must produce the RGI.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, that's where the Section 37 agreement comes in, right? I think that's the tool that the city typically has to require them to, like, similar to Alexander Park. They said as part of this rezoning, we're going to make sure that there's X amount of units, and it's very specific and detailed in terms of how many additional units, what is the cost, how much, who's investing how much, right? And so I think this, similarly to how those specifics have been laid out in the Section 37 agreement for Alexander Park, and there are many other examples in the city, I think we would want to make sure that those Section 37 agreements are not general and kind of have a box, but are really specific from the city in terms of, this is the amount of units that are going to be additional affordable. This is the sort of the affordability definition. Like those type of details are typically in Section 37 agreements. So I don't understand why it wouldn't be part of a similar Section 37 agreement for phases 4 and 5, especially if it's like an important priority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only reason is just because the funding hasn't been identified. And so just not being able to know exactly what those parameters would be at this point, right? We don't know whether they'll be RGI or affordable or co-op or some other type.
Why can't it be a prerequisite?
Sorry, say that again, Marlene?
Can't it be a prerequisite? It must be RGI.
I think from what I understand from the Housing Secretariat and from TCHC, it's simply that they can't have a funding commitment at this point in time.
But if they do get the funding, it must be RGI.
Yeah. And so this is, again, the conversation that's in progress around the Section 37 and mechanisms to secure these elements. And I agree that they are critical. I mean, they are the basis for this whole exercise, right? This is
in our neighborhood, that would be a bait and switch.
Exactly.
It's very misleading, even to me.
This is a neighborhood where there is poverty. That is the whole point.
Exactly.
They can't keep trying to turn this neighborhood into gentrification. We are fighting it tooth and nail. And the more they bring in something like that, rather than absolutely definitely what we need, which is RGI, that must be the main point. There isn't any conversation. It must be RGI. And the city has to understand that. They can't turn this into something else. That is who we are. We must have RGI and make it a prerequisite. And the city has to understand, if this is not about people first, what is it about? You are planners. And as planners, you know that communities must be about people first. I don't care what Doug Ford wants. I know you have a lot on your plate, but people is what it's all about.
Well said, Marlene.
And if we end up with a community that maybe has lots and lots and lots of more units, but they're unfit to live, if the community becomes unfit to live, what have you actually created?
Exactly. For whom? Built for whom?
Is the neighborhood.
Yeah. And this is why I keep asking about, when I keep saying the will to go after those subsidies, the energy, and putting the energy and the resources that are required to actually pursue those subsidies. Instead of putting all of their energy and their resources and pursuing funding for the affordable rental units.
It's not about numbers.
So I was hoping that maybe the city had some kind of influence there if they're working with TCHC to try and get those subsidies, so that we don't lose the opportunity to have additional RPNA.
Well said, Deanie. Super critical.
What also concerns me is that, you may all do the right thing, and then they go back and they can go to Ontario, and Ontario can overturn this because that's what it wants.
Yeah.
Which is just dismal, absolutely dismal.
I know. We'll fight that fight when we get there.
It's numbers. It's just numbers. It's not people. It's only numbers. Meet your quota.
Yeah.
There are people living here.
Well said, Marlene. So I just want to make sure that I know we talked about the community facilities and services strategy, so let's not repeat that. We'll just move on. Will there be an updated transportation infrastructure report that responds to community concerns related to neighborhood density and local traffic? And how will the community be involved in this plan?
We didn't you skipped over the question, what is the process in the community spaces?
No, we talked about the community facilities and services report and specifically a strategy. And what I heard from Catherine was that they're discussing that right now and they don't have much details. Is that correct, Catherine?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to this one related to the transportation infrastructure report and the concerns that we've heard from residents.
Yeah, so the transportation study is something that's prepared by a consultant for TCHC and Tridel. We actually just this week, at the start of the week, received the latest resubmission. So it's available on the Application Information Center now. Okay. And one of the items that was included was an update to the transportation study. So it's currently under review. And I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. And actually, I don't really. It's more of our engineers that look at it. It's quite a technical exercise. I think this is something, if folks have questions about this, that they could be raised at the community consultation meeting as well. I'm not sure if you had specific issues that you wanted to ask.
There were questions raised, Catherine, if you could recall at the last meeting. And I recall feedback from local residents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's challenging because traffic is bad in a big city. There's not, this development is not going to change, the fact that it's difficult to drive around at rush hour downtown. If that's what people want, right? We're a big city. That's just, it's not something that can be a priority. People
but for example, I know in the Daniels latest project, the one on Parliament and Oak, right?
Mm-hmm.
The designated parking spots for the public is very small, right? They didn't give many units, and people had questions related to that, right? So it's making it possible to ensure that we actually come up with the best plan to address the transportation needs of residents, and not just say, well, it's going to be a problem, or also push for alternatives for transportation. And some folks don't have that, right? Because they don't work in the community. There's not enough good jobs in our community. And that's maybe something that we could work towards. But it's also being, sensitive to those specific needs and allowing people the opportunity to provide feedback, because we want to avoid our blind spots. There's certain things that may come up that we may not be aware of. And even if it's going to be a specific consultation on, the updated transportation infrastructure report submitted by the consultant, that would be a good idea, right?
Well, and
we might not have that.
It is because we have been told in consultation sessions that there's ample parking and that parking is not a problem. But One Oak, the people in One Oak, which is a TCHC building, have a 4-year waiting list for a parking space. So how is that a sufficient parking?
It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the ask, Catherine, is to find out if this report that was provided by the consultant could be shared with the community, and for a way for residents to provide feedback or input. so the city can consider that in addition to the consultant's report.
Sorry, I was following you and then I was.
Okay, so
in addition to the
is there a way?
The consultant report?
Yes, yeah. So the consultant report is in this week. You're going to review it, or other technicians. If we have passionate residents that care about this, want to look at that report and provide their comments on the report.
Yeah, right. Which you can. It's available online, right? Or I can send it to you if you have trouble finding it.
Yeah, but how do they submit their responses? Is it to you? Is it to you?
Yeah, I'm the window.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So that's maybe what we can promote is we can let people know at the community-wide meeting that you be the point of contact for that, and we'll share it with the residents that raise this issue with us. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I may put them in touch with the transportation engineer too, but it can come through me. That's fine.
Perfect. I think we talked about community governance space earlier, but I don't know if the question was answered regarding the process for securing an AOCC model. So I'm hoping we could, end on that note. I know that we've made the case that this is a really critical opportunity for the community governed spaces. So maybe we'll end up on that. I think that's the last question.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put a couple of contacted people in the chat. So SDFA, this Social Development Division of the city, is the one that administers AOCCs. So they're the ones that would that you would go to with a request to establish one, or any questions. No. So Daniela and Aderonke are the key contact people, and that's about all I can say about it. So they would be the ones that are involved in the establishment of one and setting up.
So Danielle, are you talking about Denise or Daniela? Who's the second person? Just want to make sure I caught that.
So Daniela, who works with the SDP groups.
Okay.
And then Aderonke is the second person. She's also in social development SDFA, and she is involved in the any requests for AOCCs as well.
Awesome. So I'll own Daniela with the SDPs. What the point? That's awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah, that's right.
You put that in the chat?
Oh,
of course, no commitments, but the viability and the conversation around a pathway to that. We need to have those conversations before timelines overpass us.
Got it.
Okay, my friends, that's completes our the video and sort of the feedback we got from the city planner. We'll go on to the next part of our meeting, which is to take questions and have a discussion, and hopefully we'll end our meeting in about 10 to 15 minutes. So who would like to go first? Who would like to start us off with questions? Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, me? Oh, I didn't have my hand up, but I don't know. I mean, what is the RPNA and the other kind of community group position on? I mean, it seems like it's too late now. They're really trying to speed up this process. This will be the second community meeting, and then I don't think they have an obligation to hold any other community meetings or any intention to do so before submitting this to community council with their final report and recommendation. So I think we're kind of really haven't succeeded in engaging the community in this. I mean, I know you guys have been reaching out to lots of small groups, but I just haven't seen any big community meetings on this in Regent Park to talk about the implications of this rezoning for people who live here.
Excellent point, Stephanie. We did call for an in-person meeting, and we followed up as of the meeting with Catherine and put a request in writing that's going to be submitted to the city tomorrow morning. So RPNA is going to be pushing for more consultations before this matter is approved by City Council. I think there's a lot of things that are not yet confirmed. You heard from Catherine. There's a lot of details related to the strategy of implementing indoor space that hasn't been discussed. We haven't confirmed a community governance model with regards to the AOCC model. last
Well,
week I did.
didn't she also say that that's not really part of the rezoning process, that that's site planning, and that this is just the boxes, it's the heights, it's the density, it's, and other kind of immediately related things like parking, but that all that other stuff is to be figured out down the line, and it's not really part of the rezoning as such.
Well, they already do seem to be talking about it to a greater extent than I would have thought, because what you just said is what I thought was the case. But they are getting involved in what kind of ownership it will be. So at least we have to make sure they get involved in the right way.
Well, but I think they're doing that, cynically, I think they're doing that to confuse the issue around what the rezoning is all about, by saying, what would you like to see? And what about this? And what about that? And really, it's heights, density. It's heights and density. That's really what the rezoning is about.
I think it is at this stage.
Yeah, but they do seem to be talking about the other stuff, and they're talking about it in their private meetings with Tridel, and we don't even know what they're saying.
Yeah, totally. Well, and interestingly, right? I mean, all this talk about the councillor being so engaged. Well, the councillor is engaged with the developer and the planners, and not with the community. I haven't seen him reach out once to the community on this issue.
Mm-hmm.
On to him.
Okay, Marlene, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
How many buildings are they now asking for at 38 stories?
Well, they're saying 13, right? But they're massive buildings. So they're massive buildings with more than one tower. They're gigantic. It's really about 30 towers between mid-rise and high-rise that they want to put in. And they've bumped up the heights even further with the second submission. So now they're going to be multiple skyscrapers on Oak, and I think something like 9 buildings in total, high rises on Oak.
Will they publish this?
It's, well, again, they want to make it as confusing as possible. There are about 50 documents that are uploaded onto the rezoning application website. It just makes it impossible, really, for anyone to kind of sift through all the complexity of it.
But there's no one document that says how many buildings, the height of each building?
There was one in the Tridel presentation when was it, April? And I think they've submitted a new kind of drawing. And in that drawing, you can see the number of towers. And
last one just came down. This last one for all of these other buildings seems to me just came down in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, it did. It was submitted 2 weeks ago or within the last 2 weeks. Yeah.
So it should be there somewhere to say how many buildings
it will be. It will be, but you probably have to sift through a whole bunch of documents to find it.
Well, wouldn't that be a good question for us tomorrow night?
They'll probably present it, I would think, tomorrow. Because that's what they did last time, right? They ran us through, I think, or was that the Tridel meeting? I'm getting confused now. But I think they did have a rendering in both the meetings showing what those few streets would look like with all these towers now on them.
Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow, are they just sort of telling us, or are we able to speak and ask? This is we're asking questions.
Tomorrow is very critical, because tomorrow is when they're going to document comments from the community about anything related to the rezoning application. In fact, in the chat, please check what I'm in the chat. I put 2 links, one to the application directly. So if you've got time, you can look at the application, and one to register. So if you have not registered for tomorrow's meeting, please, one takeaway from this meeting is to register. Okay?
Oh God, where do you do this?
And I sent an email regarding this, Marlene. I can send it to you again. But it's very critical. So even here, specifically register at, I have this link here. I was trying to make it easy for people to register, because it's not easy. But here's can you see that link? Does that work? See if you can register using that link.
This huge thing?
Mm-hmm.
The issue with them having
the page is no longer available. I wonder what happened there.
What?
Yeah, the page is not. Okay, let me go through the difficult way of getting it. 1 second, let's see if I can get it again. Copy.
Maybe able to post it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Whoever wants to speak next.
The one thing I was going to say is that the problem, Marlene, to your point about tomorrow's meeting, is that by having it in the medium that they're having it in, it really allows for no follow-up questions by individuals who, you know, so it really gives them a ton of control over what gets said. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just searching Regent Park.
Well, this is what I said to her too about these webinars. You can't tell who's there. You can't tell how many people are there. It's
Yeah.
Oh, here's a registration thing.
Okay, I found it. So if you search Regent Park, okay, there it is. Application. So it is public application detail, public consultation. So I'll give folks a community meeting. Here it is, community meeting. I'll give you folks, I'm just going to share the screen so that people can see what I've done. So when you click on the first link, it'll take you to this website, and then you can actually search for Regent Park.
It's really hard to find anything in there.
Yeah, so what I did is I went to the development applications webpage, and then I searched Regent Park.
Walied, David just put on the direct link. David?
Yeah, I know, but that link is dead. But I'm going to try it again. Here.
It works.
I just registered.
It registers?
Yeah.
So what are the telephone options?
Does that mean you can also speak?
Yes, if you have questions.
Okay, okay.
Michael, do you want the telephone number? I can give it to you.
Yeah.
It's 647 484 1598. And the meeting ID is 2457 532 3096.
It also says, I'm sorry.
2457 532.
Yep, 3096. And then
Just a second. I'm going to be.
And I just want to let folks know the registration link is in the chat. I found it.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Also says you can register for another person.
And it looks like this when you're registering. It looks like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just click on register and then put your name.
Have you registered, Dini?
Yeah, when they first sent it out.
Oh, good. Okay.
Oh, use this link to register. Thank you, David.
Okay. Phone numbers was 647 484. And the last four digits?
1598.
1598. And then it was 2457.
Yep. 532.
532.
Yeah, 3096.
532 3096.
Yep.
Just a second.
We should be sharing the link of how to register on social media and also via email for folks who haven't registered, okay? Make sure I do that today.
Did you say you wanted to meet earlier or not?
Say that again?
Said last week you wanted to meet a little bit earlier.
Okay, is there anything after 3096?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a passcode.
A passcode?
Yep. 734.
734.
Yeah, 368.
734 368?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Registered. for the meeting tomorrow. Do folks want to meet tomorrow prior to the meeting?
Well, that's
Why?
what you said.
Yeah, is there interest in that? 'Cause you can
Why?
promote it.
Why? Yeah. Why?
Why?
Why? There's no point, I don't think.
Yeah, I think we all know what the issues are.
Yeah.
I think we can all like come up with a point or two to raise at tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think we should be good. I
You
will
guys
send the
posted on the
registration link
RPNA?
for those who haven't registered. Okay.
You guys posted on the RPNA Facebook page?
Yeah. I'll post the registration link as well.
Okay.
Just as a note to everyone to register tonight. Okay, my friends, any other questions?
Time to go.
Time to go. It's 8:12. So I just want to thank you all for joining our meeting today. I know it was a long video, but I could not speak on behalf of Catherine. I wanted you to hear directly from Catherine the responses to our questions. I hope it was informative. I hope you have a better sense of the process and also the commitments made so far and what is still left to be settled. Whether it's a strategy for a community, for the implementation of community space, indoor, the AOCC governance model. I just want to give folks a heads up. I did reach out to Daniela, who supports the SDP in Regent Park, for more information related to that. And I'm hoping we'll get a response soon. But there's a lot that needs to be settled before this application is approved.
Yeah, but also, since they are caring about the density, we really need to talk about this phenomenal leap in density.
Yeah.
Huge.
Enormous. I mean, it will
gigantic.
change this community completely. And where else is it in the city?
Nowhere. Only on industrial lands are they increasing.
Yeah. To take an area like this and land that many towers is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous.
Well, and yeah.
St. Jamestown, I know, was highly density. There was high density in St. Jamestown.
Yes, we'll be more dense than St. Jamestown. The final phases will be more dense than St. Jamestown.
Oh.
Okay, I just want to say that if you do have any questions, I'm just going to share this on the screen. Reach out to our elected representatives. It's part of our slide deck, actually. You can contact the councillor, Chris Moyes. You can contact our MP, Christine Wong Tam. And you can also contact the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, as well as our MP for Toronto Centre, Marcy Ian. This revitalization or the investments made in our community is the responsibility of all three levels of government. So please do not hesitate to contact our elected representatives, okay, regarding this issue.
Fortunately, both Chris Moyes and Kristen Wong Tam support this. They're totally supportive of it.
Yeah.
The city will always support the city.
Leave that up, please.
Well, but they're elected representatives, right? They should be talking to.
Leave that up, please.
Leave it up? Okay, 1 second, sorry.
Get up.
1 second. I'll put that again. Please do connect with your elected representative. There it is.
But I would say that people should reach out to the mayoral candidates.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really, really important at this point. And the three lead ones, which are Josh, Matlow, Olivia Chow, and Saunders. I mean, they're going to have strong mayor powers.
I won't contact Saunders.
What?
Personally, I will not contact Saunders.
No, but he's just one of the top three.
He doesn't have no clue about social housing.
No, not at all.
Who are you talking about?
Mark Saunders, the former chief of police.
Oh, Jesus, please.
He's lost.
Oh, boy.
So, my friends, again, the contacts of your elected reps are for Chris Moyes, Kristen Wong Tam, and Minister Marcy Ian is on the screen. Okay?
Yes.
What time is the meeting tomorrow?
The consultation meeting is at 6 o'clock, I believe.
Okay, y'all. See ya.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please follow our social media platforms. And for more information, please visit our website.
Thank you.